Hi all. Several of you have asked about models or templates for developing paragraphs in academic papers. Let's begin with the most fundamental organizational principle of paragraphs. They should be focused on developing one idea. Generally, that means you'll need to make some relatively abstract claims and provide some evidence and analysis of that evidence. The question then is how to structure all of these rhetorical moves. One helpful pattern is Eric Hoyt's uneven U from his book, The Elements of Academic Style. Hoyt's basic idea is that academic paragraphs usually begin abstractly and then move to more concrete sentences by presenting data before increasing the abstraction in their conclusion. That is, they first analyze the data and then tie it to other paragraphs in the paper. Hoyt determines a sentence's level of abstraction based on the work it does in a sentence. Level 5 sentences are the most abstract, and level 1 the most concrete. On page 60, Hoyt provides the following table to clarify the differences between these sentence types. Level 5, abstract. General, oriented toward a solution or conclusion. Level 4, less general, oriented toward a problem, pulls ideas together. Level 3, conceptual summary, draws together two or more pieces of evidence or introduces a broad example. Level 2, description, plain or interpretive summary, establishing shot. Level 1, concrete, evidentiary, raw, unmediated data or information. Arbitrary though they might be, this concept of levels helps to chart the movement in a paragraph from general to specific and back again. In this graph of an uneven U paragraph, you can see this pattern working out. The graph's vertical axis indicates the level of abstraction of each clause in the paragraph, and the horizontal axis maps the position of that clause relative to the entire paragraph. The paragraph this graph describes begins at a somewhat abstract level, a level 4 sentence, then dips down to become more concrete before rising again to at least the same level of abstraction it began with. This shape helps to guarantee that the paragraph frames the information it presents, then interprets that information before tying it all back to the thesis. Of course, the graph we've just analyzed illustrates a concept, but does not correspond to any particular paragraph in an actual essay. So, let's take a passage from the early draft of a paper and see what it reveals. I'll read the paragraph to you and identify how abstract each sentence is according to Hoyt's scale. I'll also skip the parenthetical citations in my reading to keep the flow of the paragraph going. We begin with a level 5 sentence. The PhD was initially designed to train the next generation of academics, but this career outcome is looking less likely for today's graduate. Next, we move to a level 4 sentence. There have been claims that there is an oversupply of graduates for academic positions over the last decade at least. Now we go down to a level 3 sentence. The latest Australian data showcased in the Australian Council of Learned Academics, ACOLA, report suggests that 60% of Australia's PhD graduates will not end up in academia, a finding consistent with other advanced economies. And we end with a level 1 sentence. For example, a recent survey by the Vita organization in the UK showed that although the overall unemployment rate for PhD graduates was low, around 2%, only 38% of PhD graduates are now employed in academia after graduations. As you probably noticed, this paragraph fails to go anywhere. Ending with a concrete sentence, the paragraph leaves the reader unsure how the data connects to the paper's thesis. But let's look at a revision that recasts the paragraph in the uneven U model. Again, I've cut out the citations to keep the paragraph flowing. Let me read the revised paragraph to you again and identify the level of each sentence. We begin with the level 4 sentence. For more than a decade, scholars of higher education have claimed that there is an oversupply of graduates for academic positions. Now we move to a level 3 sentence. If this oversupply problem is real, we should see more PhD graduates making a rational decision to leave academia at the end of their degree, and statistics seem to be bearing out this trend. And the next sentence becomes even more concrete with a level 2 sentence. The latest Australian data suggests that 60% of Australia's PhD graduates will not end up in academia, a finding consistent with other advanced economies. Now we are ready for a concrete example and a level 1 sentence. For example, a recent survey by the VITA organization in the UK showed that although the overall unemployment rate for PhD graduates was low, around 2%, only 38% of PhD graduates are now employed in academia after graduation. And having introduced the data, we begin to interpret it with a level 4 sentence. If more PhD graduates are looking to leave academia, we must ask, what does the PhD need to change? With that analysis in hand, we are prepared for an abstract level 5 sentence. Since the PhD was initially designed to train the next generation of academics, this change may be dramatic, with far-reaching consequences for candidates, supervisors, and institutions. As you can see, this paragraph goes somewhere. The last sentence presents perhaps the most thought-provoking claim of the paragraph and keeps the reader moving forward. In other words, this model of paragraph is helpful for any sort of writing where analysis and argument are essential. In fact, the model can be telescoped to serve as the structure for sections in a paper or even chapters in a book. The trick is to make sure that you move from abstract to concrete and back again. But as useful as the structure is, it has some limitations. First, it doesn't apply to fiction or any writing that doesn't emphasize analysis and argument. Second, the development it calls for in individual paragraphs is ill-suited for most journalism, which relies heavily on short paragraphs. Finally, it doesn't extend to paragraphs that are not primarily focused on data and analysis. For instance, it doesn't work well for most introductions, conclusions, or transition paragraphs. Nevertheless, as a model for paragraphs in an argumentative or analytic paper, the Uneven U proves exceptionally helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions. Cheers.